Hello and welcome. My name is Meepolis, Daihichi, and today we are looking at and talking about Noir is the New Black. Noir stories from Black creators, an anthology edited by Fabrice Sapolsky, published by Fair Square Comics in 2021. Content notes for lynching, gun shootouts, substance use, smoking, and decapitated animals. Since we are talking about short stories, violence isn't lingered on too long, but is fairly front and center for many stories. On the other hand, what kinds of keywords came to mind reading this anthology? Revenge, down and out. Family, honor, debts, and sketchy. Yet another creator-heavy book, which I seem to keep running into of late, but such is life. Going chapter by chapter. First off, we have Vera's List, with story by Yyrone Finch, art by Todd Harris, and colors by Toyin Ajetunmobi, a story of blown cover, revenge, and airplanes. From Cleveland, Ohio, Yyrone Finch has apparently written for comics, page, stage, and screen. He also wrote the horror comic Swine, Jesus Left Some Unfinished Business. Todd Harris is credited with work in Spider-Geddon, Vault of Spiders and Marvels, Voices, Wakanda Forever, among others. And colorist Toyin Ajetunmobi has also worked on Mocha Warrior Queen and EXO, The Legend of Whale Williams. Links to those reviews in the description. Story 2 was Gemini Vision, with story by Brandon Easton and art/colors by Dietrich Smith. The story of the search for a sister and a corrupt priest. Brandon Easton is a pretty prolific comic creator, credited with titles like Shadow Law and Andre the Giant, Closer to Heaven, among others, and crossing over to TV and movies. Dietrich Smith has similarly done work for DC and Marvel, video games, and animators. I am extremely interested in picking up Victor Laval's Destroyer, an award-winning sci-fi horror comic he worked on with Victor Laval. Chapter 3 is titled Oozly by Greg Burnham, Marcus Williams, and Paris Alleyne, a very purple-tinted story with a bit more of a comedy angle about surviving undercover with your little sister? ? Living in Atlanta, Greg Burnham is a self-published comic book creator whose other works includes historical action-adventure fantasy, The Search for Sedika, and The Tuskegee Heirs. Marcus Williams, also in Atlanta, is also a co-creator on the Tuskegee Heirs comic. Cool! Last but not least, we have Paris Alleyne of Toronto, who is both an Eisner and Joe Shuster Award winner, who has worked on Captain Canuck, TMNT, Black Panther, and Toronto Comics, among others. Story number 4 is The Black Constable by Nick Allen, Marvin McKoy, and Jackson Godwin, a story of Jamaica, Maroons, and revenge. Nick Allen of Baltimore is a co-founder of Rexco Comics and has a physics degree. He has self-published a number of comics including C-Listers and Giant Robot Warrior Maintenance Crew. Mervyn McKoy, also of Rexco Comics, is a Jamaican artist and co-creator of C-Listers and Giant Robot Warrior Maintenance Crew, among many other comics. On the other hand, Jackson Godwin is a concept/comic artist and illustrator of Lagos, Nigeria. Our fifth entry is Southern Hospitality by Mikhail Hardy, Eli Johnson, and Robin L. Davis, another story of revenge, this time on the KKK. Michaela Hardy is a DC area graphic designer /painter /storyboard artist /animator /illustrator with over 10 years of experience teaching art in the public school system. Eli Johnson is a North Hollywood freelance illustrator and comic book artist. And Robin L. Davies is a comic artist and designer with an MFA in communication arts from Savannah College of Art and Design. Then we have The Message, Josephine Speaks by Roxxy, Haze, and Pat Masioni, a story of a singer who will not be intimidated. A gamer, rapper, comedian, and creator, Roxxy Haze is a poet, TV writer, and now in comics. Pat Masioni appears to be a Congolese artist who has been drawing his entire life. He lives in France. Next we have Heart of the Matter by David F. Walker, Mark M.D. Bright, and Toyin Ajetunmobi, a story of a writer running from his demons. David F. Walker also worked on Bitterroot and the Black Panther Party, a graphic novel history. Check out links to those reviews in the description. Mark M.D. Bright Bright, aka Doc Bright, has penciled for Marvel and DC and co-created the Quantum and Woody series with Christopher Priest. And story number 8 is Unfinished Business by Greg Anderson, Elysee Guile with Eric Van Elslande, and another appearance of Toyin Ajetunmobi, a story of a gay man pulled back through time to the Tulsa riots. Greg Anderson Elysee has popped up already in the Young Men in Love anthology, and my library apparently owns his original comic series Isnane, the Were-Spider, so I'll definitely be checking that out. And Eric Van Elslande is a French comic artist. Next we have Entanglement by Erika, Hardison, Karen S. Darboe, and Walt Barna, a story of women kicking butt for love of a woman. Erika Hardison is a writer, publisher, and podcaster in New Jersey. Growing up in southern Italy, Karen S. Darboe is a prolific comic artist that has done work on Disney Villains, Bloodline, Daughter of Blade, and Crypt of Shadows, among many more. And Walt Barna of Cape Town, South Africa, is a colorist who is also credited on the previously mentioned Isnana. Story 10 is Gluttony, written by Dorphise Jean and Vladimir Alexis, with art once again by Walt Barna. This story is about The Godfather meets magic, fueled by revenge. A loss prevention officer / comic book creator, Dorphise Jean is a Haitian artist living in Miami and creator behind the original comic Spirit's Destiny. Vladimir Alexis may be the owner of BTG Comics? Then we have Niru by M.D. Marie, Don Walker, Larry Welch, and another appearance of Toyin Ajetunmobi, a story of military zombies and gearing up for revenge. M.D. Marie is a writer of fiction, poetry, short stories, novels, plays, and screenplays. She's also behind the comic series Vindication from Image Comics, another intriguing looking title that my library does indeed possess. An inker with Marvel, Larry Welch is credited with work on the comic adaptations of Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Mortal Kombat. Next, there is The Circuit by Trowa, Christopher Harris, and David Brame. This is a sketchy story that opens at a poker table. Trowa, Christopher Harris, international person of mystery, aka DuckDuckGo turned up nothing. In contrast, David Brame is someone who has come up on this channel before as artist on After the Rain and contributor to Young Men in Love. Links in the description to those reviews. Story number 3 is Chasing the Night by Hannibal Tabu, Quinn McGowan, and another appearance of Paris Alleyne, a story of an asexual non-binary assassin. Hannibal Tabu also wrote MPLS Sound, where I profiled them. Quinn McGowan, founder of Legends Press, who has worked on a variety of projects, including winning a Ringo Award for a superhero story. They contributed to the Mine anthology for Planned Parenthood. Then we have Ebo Landing by Melody Cooper, Eder Massais, and another appearance from Paris Alleyne, a futuristic story about infection. Melody Cooper has worked as a story editor on Law & Order SVU and has also worked on the comic Omni, which my library doesn't have for some reason, among many other projects. Eder Massais has worked on a number of Spider-Man comics, Punchline and The Vaudevillians, and Space Goats, among many other projects. Winding things down, we have story number 15, Canopy by Brandon Thomas and Stephen Harris, and another contribution from Walt Barna, a story of mechs and hits. Brandon Thomas also apparently wrote Excellence, which I did review back in the day. Find link in description. And Stephen Harris co-created DC's Aztec, The Ultimate Man, with Grant Morrison and Mark Miller, among many other award-winning work. And last but not least, we have No Outlet by Gary Phillips and the final contribution of David Brame and Paris Alleyne, a story with a lot of text. Gary Phillips is a writer and activist out of LA. He has a long history of writing mysteries and wrote the Vertigo miniseries Angeltown, among many other works. As with all anthologies, there's some stories I liked better than others, but overall I was pretty impressed by the diversity of stories and the seeming lack of all-consuming misogyny, because that is an issue that I bump into a lot with reading noir stories. This after they did reference Frank Miller in the introduction. The spread on quality of art also felt pretty strong, with things ranging from average to above average, plus it's full color. Looking at the intersectionality aspects that I try and highlight in all my reviews, as I already mentioned, I was pretty impressed by the amount of gender diversity across the binary, with a dash of beyond for good measure. Not to mention, sexuality also saw a diversity of combinations. Race was obviously a focus of the collection and really did an amazing job of really showing the diversity within the Black Noir community, something that can be missed if you are just highlighting a few Black stories within a more racially diverse whole. Noir's focus on the down and out and the streets did mean some class diversity across the spectrum. It's maybe not the place for squeaky clean working class heroes, but that's just an aspect of the genre and didn't feel like it was stigmatizing people. As far as my memory goes, looking back, it seems like disability was not really represented at all. People generally felt either alive and able-bodied or dead, or reanimated and able-bodied again. So, wrapping things up, I really enjoyed reading and reviewing this collection. My only complaint is that the stories were very, very short. 4 stars, and I can't wait to pick up all the other books I discovered from these creators. Bye y'all, keep reading, and stand with striking workers. And as always, Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.